You're not going to force your worldview on me. And that should be the whole attitude of everybody in this movement. Stop taking shit from little shit diapered children. Because that's what these people are. Little children who have never grown up. They're not psychological adults. And I'm not taking shit from psychological infants. So let's look at the actual polarization dynamics, or polarization dialectics, as I like to call it. This is the psychological sorcery that goes on to create a world of masters and slaves. So let's go full screen with this. Very proud of this next transition. Thought I did a good job with that one. Okay, worked a little bit on that. So, there's really two types of people in the world. There are the people who believe that government should exist, and there's people who know that government is a euphemism for slavery. That's the one true divide in humanity. But there's another subdivision in the supporters, the police and their types of mindset, and then in the supporters of them and their two kinds of mindsets. So the police themselves, I put over here in the left category in red, which are the order followers and the psychopaths. And again, I'm putting the slide from last week on there that garbage attracts garbage. How government draws people into policing that are the worst kind of human beings. They are the psychopaths, the control freaks, the bullies, the racists, and anybody else who is just a self-loathing piece of dirt who wants to bring their brand and their form of violence upon others. That is what government attracts. Government is garbage, so it attracts garbage. What these people all have in common is that they have chronic left brain dominance or chronic left brain imbalance. And the characteristics of this imbalance are they have a misanthropic worldview, meaning they generally hate people. And they hate people for the wrong reasons. They don't hate people because they're ignorant. They hate people for their own selfish reasons. Oh, there's too many people. I don't like the way this culture behaves. I hate these kind of people because they look different from me or have different customs from me. They don't hate people because they're actually committing violence. They don't hate people because they're actually doing immoral behaviors, because this is what the order followers and psychopaths in the police force do. They commit immoral acts and behaviors and violence and put people under coercion and duress. So if they hated those things, they wouldn't go into a field, into a job, into a position where they are actively doing these things. They seek out a position where they can be allowed with immunity to do these things. That's how it works. That's the kind of psychology government itself is drawing, is attracting into it. And people do not understand how this psychological dynamic works. They naively believe that, oh, these people are all well-intentioned and they just hate, violence and coercion of other people and they're there to help. Stop believing nonsense, bullshit justifications. These are fairy tales. This is what violent, coercive people who have a ton of self-loathing and are just control freaks, psychopaths, bullies, and fucking racists want you to believe their intentions are. And it is not true. It's bullshit. It's a bullshit lie that psychopaths use to cover up their true intentions. And we have to become psychologically guarded and psychologically mature against their manipulation tactics, to tell us that their intent is to help and protect innocence. You're full of fucking shit. And I'll say it to your face. You're full of fucking shit. And this is what no one else will say. No one else will just come out and say it like that because they're coward, chicken shit people who won't just come out and say the fucking truth the way it is. So I'll do that for all of humanity if I have to. Because there ain't nobody saying anything like this on podcasts that I've ever watched. Not a one person. The next psychological characteristic in their sick, twisted, psychopathic left brain worldview of these order followers and psychopaths is that they have a strong belief in the authority vested in certain human beings. In other words, they condone and believe in slavery, if we're not even mincing words or using nonsense euphemisms to try to spare people's feelings. They're supporters and condoners and believers in human slavery. The next characteristic is they generally lack empathy. And if you've ever dealt with police, this is true. Either they never had it to begin with and they're primary psychopaths, or they've essentially been turned into cold, callous fucking psychopaths because of the nature of the work that they've done. And it's put them in a position of constant adrenal rushes, which go right to the brain and destroy the fucking brain. And particularly adrenal rushes absolutely annihilate the electrical impulses and all of the neuro pathways of the limbic system. Look it up. Look it up in neuroscience. It's very well known. At least in more advanced neuroscience. If you live in a constant adrenal state, in a constant state of adrenal engagement, okay, of being an adrenaline follower and junkie, and that's what violence puts us into. Violent state of mind puts us into the adrenaline state, and that roots us in the R complex of the brain. And if you look up biochemically what it does in neuroscience terms, is it absolutely annihilates the electrical impulses and the synaptic pathways of the midbrain, the mammalian brain, which is responsible for the feeling of emotions in the body. It's called the mammalian brain, or the limbic system, the limbic brain. I covered this extensively in earlier episodes of What on Earth is Happening. Go back to square one, podcast number 1, and listen, and you'll get those episodes about how the brain works. And that is what police have had done to their brain. Most of them are completely annihilated, have completely annihilated limbic systems of the brain, and therefore they lack, in general terms, lack empathy. They have an inborn desire to control others because of their own inadequacies. We're going to talk a lot about their psychological state of either real inadequacy complexes or perceived inadequacy complexes. And they, of course, justify constantly, and justify comes from the Latin jus, meaning right, and facere, meaning to make or to create or to fabricate. So when we put those words together, to justify literally makes to invent a right, to create a right where one did not exist and never existed. So they justify their own violence as a means to an end. They are justifiers, which means they believe that they can create rights for themselves that do not exist. And we have the two categories that we're going to look at of order followers and psychopaths. And we're going to look at the psychological characteristics of both sets of police. So on the left-hand side, you have police. On the right-hand side, or in other words, what I'm calling the garbage that is attracted to institutionalized garbage. They're already garbage, and they are attracted to the garbage called government. They're already mental, psychological, emotional, and spiritual garbage. And they are attracted to the institutional garbage slavery called government. Then on the other side, you have their supporters, which I'm breaking down into two categories also. I call them the bootlickers and the cowards. And again, this is the idea that cowards attract more garbage into our entire human experience. And they throw their principles down the drain and in the garbage can at the first sign of any physical danger. These people have chronic right brain dominance or imbalance. They also share the same false misanthropic worldview that the dominators on the left-hand side of this chart have. They generally hate people for all the wrong reasons, not because of their ignorance, but because of selfish reasons, or because they're not like them enough either. And I see it every day. I hear it every day from people. Again, a couple of weeks ago, I was looking at a Facebook post, and these people in these protests don't share my worldview and political ideology, and I think police should just shut them all down, whether they're peaceful or not. Not just the you know, ones who are actually destroying property and committing violence on people. They're saying even the ones who are there for legitimate gripes because they don't like their political worldview. And they say, quite frankly, I don't really care about anyone else except myself and my own and my worldview and the worldview of others who are like me. And guess what? That's called Satanism. That's what that's called, Satanism. That's the very ideology of Satanism, and I know all about it because I was a priest of that religion for many years. And that's the problem, is Hollywood has sold people a false version of what Satanism is in the worship of the Christian devil. It is, what Satanism really is not giving a rat shit about anybody but yourself and those who are like you. That's it. That's all you care about. That's called Satanism. You don't want justice for everybody. You want justice for only the people you agree with and who are like you and share your cultural values. And now that's not the same say that there aren't differences in cultures and things that are better or worse in certain ones. Not everything is the same. But what I'm saying is, these people, these bootlickers and cowards and supporters of the police generally are in a satanic mindset and only give a shit about themselves and their own and their property, and they don't care about the injustice that is done to others through the police as an institution. These people who are bootlickers and cowards have no sense of true personal responsibility. They want other people to come up and clean up messes for them. And I'm going to explain how they try to abdicate that responsibility, and I'm going to explain what taking on that true responsibility would look like in a society that really was based voluntarily and we understood both the non-aggression and self-defense principles in their fullness. They desire to be kept safe or protected, and this is a myth. This can never occur. Police forces don't do that. Even their ostensible duty is not to do that. It is to simply catch people who have done violence to other people, or what they say is violence to other people, and then punish them through a court system, or even summarily on the street, as they're mostly doing. They're not there to try to protect anybody. They even state this themselves, and the Supreme Court has even stated that they have no duty to keep anyone safe or protect them. They show up after violence has been committed and then go and try to find the one who did the violence. Unless they're the ones doing the violence, then they have qualified immunity and get away with it wholesale. So the belief that police can or are there to protect or keep anybody safe is a total fucking myth, bullshit, false belief system that was never true to begin with. And if you only just open your eyes and use your own powers of observation, you will understand police have never done that and never will do that. They don't keep anyone safe. They don't protect anybody. They're not a deterrent for anything anybody wants to do because they are never able to actually stop them from the act of doing it. They can only show up and do some form of punishment to people after they have done it. So they never obviate or remove the free will of anyone that wants to conduct violence. That free will is always there. And somebody just has to be willing to trade anything bad happening to their person physically or possibly their freedom of movement if they want to conduct that form of violence. Nothing is stopping anybody from committing violence unto you except you and your ability to defend yourself and your body and your property with whatever means of self-defense you have at your disposal. That's the truth of the fact of the fucking matter, whether you like it or not, whether you understand it or not. And nothing will ever make that untrue. And these people, these bootlickers and cowards, want to justify the violence of other people. They don't try to justify their own violence because they're condoning and supporting violence, but they justify all of the other people who are doing the violence. They justify their behavior, their violent and immoral behavior as a means to an end as well. So you could see the ways that these two mindsets differ, but you could also see they're very similar in some regards.